Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're going to unravel a fascinating and honestly incredibly relatable modern mystery. Look, if you've ever spent half the night just staring at the ceiling wondering what on earth is wrong with you, well, you are exactly where you need to be. We're exploring the lost history of sleep. Okay, let's dive into this. Picture this. It's 2 a.m. The house is completely silent, your alarm isn't set to go off for another, 4 hours, but your eyes just snap open. You toss, you turn, and you feel that super familiar rush of frustration. You're probably thinking, why is my body malfunctioning, right? We tend to treat this middle-of-the-night wakefulness like some sort of glitch in our biological programming, but to understand what's actually happening in your brain at 2 a.m., we have to look backward.
Tonight, when you go to bed and flip your bedroom light switch, you probably won't even think twice about it. But for 99.9% of human history, that switch simply didn't exist. The ability to just banish the dark with the flick of a finger, that is a tiny, microscopic blip on the timeline of our species. To find out why you aren't sleeping, we actually need to travel back into the profound, absolute blackness that defined our ancestors' reality.
Which brings us to our first section, the Great Darkness. 300,000 years of night.
Let's step into what we can really call the Great Darkness. And I'm not just talking about a lack of street lamps here. This is an environmental absolute that dominated our evolutionary story for over 300 millennia. Just think about the sheer scale of this for a second. For over 300,000 years, your ancestors spent nearly half of their entire lives enveloped into darkness, so thick they probably couldn't even see their own hands in front of their faces once the sun went down. And this wasn't just some inconvenience they had to endure. This environment was a massive evolutionary driver. That immense, inescapable darkness literally restructured the human brain. It fundamentally programmed our biology. It dictated our hormones, our survival instincts, and most importantly for us today, exactly how we rest.
And here is where we absolutely have to shatter a massive modern myth. You know that solid, continuous, unbroken 8-hour block of sleep that we all endlessly stress out about achieving? Well, it's a total historical anomaly. Seriously, it's a completely modern invention. The whole idea that you're supposed to power down like a machine for 8 straight hours goes completely against the way humanity lived for the vast majority of its existence.
Next up, the campfire revolution, a 30-foot radius of light.
To see how our relationship with the night really started to shift, we have to look at one of the most pivotal moments in anthropology, which is, of course, the discovery of fire. Suddenly, humans carved out this tiny 30-foot radius of safety against the pitch black. But just think about the immense gaps in time here. We've got evidence of controlled fire in caves going back 1 million years. Then Homo sapiens emerge around 300,000 years ago, evolving heavily alongside fire, sure, but still largely at the mercy of the natural day and night cycle. Then all the way at the other end of the timeline, which is practically yesterday in evolutionary terms, Louis XIV introduces widespread street lighting in Paris in 1667. Our modern biology was built over hundreds of thousands of years, and it was completely unprepared for the sudden jolt of city lights.
But let's think about what that early firelight actually did. Anthropologist Polly Weissner's fascinating research points out that fire didn't just keep us warm. It was a total catalyst for social evolution. Without fire, we were vulnerable prey in the dark, forced to stay quiet and hidden. But within that glowing 30-foot radius, we were safe. We evolved from hunted animals into deeply connected societies. That firelight gave us time to talk, to share, and to become storytellers.
Now, what's really interesting about this is how deeply this fire management became woven into our social fabric, to the point where it persisted all the way into written laws. Take the word curfew. It's a concept we still use today to dictate when people should be off the streets, right? Well, it literally comes from the Old French couvre-feu, which translates to cover the fire. Managing the light in the dark was so absolutely essential to human survival and societal order that it actually shaped our language and our oldest civic rules.
All right, moving on to first and second sleep, the forgotten rhythm.
This brings us right into the pre-industrial era. Before those streetlights in Paris, before the Industrial Revolution, how did people actually sleep? Well, they certainly didn't do it in one big chunk. They followed a forgotten rhythm. Through some really meticulous historical records across the British Isles and beyond, researcher Roger Ekirch found that human slumber was decidedly biphasic. Basically, it happened in 2 distinct phases. Step 1 was the first sleep. This began shortly after sundown and lasted until around midnight. Then came step 2, which was an entirely normal, expected period of wakefulness known as the watch. And finally, step 3, the second sleep, which carried them from the early hours of the morning right until dawn. This was the universal standard of rest for millennia.
And we've got the concrete scientific receipts to prove this isn't just historical trivia, it's raw human physiology. Eckertz documented it historically back in 2001. But then, look at Thomas Weir's landmark 1992 darkness experiment. When modern humans were plunged into pre-industrial levels of darkness for 14 hours a night, you know what happened? Their sleep naturally fractured right back into this ancient biphasic pattern. Plus, a 2013 study by Wright and colleagues showed that just taking people camping, away from all modern lights, resets their biological circadian clocks backward by roughly 2 hours, realigning them perfectly with the sun. This dual sleep drive, it is still hardwired right inside of you.
Let's explore that gap a bit more in the midnight watch, a meditative window. So let's zoom in on that middle period, that mysterious gap between the first and second sleep that modern society tends to panic over and diagnose as insomnia. To our ancestors, waking up in the middle of the night wasn't a crisis at all. It was a calm, entirely expected period of wakefulness. Depending on the culture and the era, people used this hour or two for quiet reflection, for praying, for tending to the fire, or maybe just talking quietly in bed. It was basically a built-in meditative window. They weren't lying there stressing out about being awake because, well, being awake was simply part of the natural rhythm of the night.
So the crucial point here is captured perfectly in Thomas Weir's scientific conclusion. He states, in short photoperiods, human sleep is biphasic. Simply put, when winter brings shorter days and artificial lights are taken out of the equation, your brain naturally defaults to two separate sleeps. Your biology wants to break up the night. It completely expects a gap in the middle. The only reason it feels weird or unnatural today is because of the environment we've suddenly built all around ourselves.
Which leads us to the cost of progress. Trading stars for screens. And this brings us crashing right back into the present day. We have rapidly traded away the environment our bodies evolved to understand, and honestly, this is the core of our modern biological friction. Think about the Milky Way, the natural, profound darkness that served as our ancestral cue for deep rest and melatonin production. Now contrast that with a smartphone screen. It's literally a concentrated beam of blue light that we hold mere inches from our faces while lying in bed. We are flooding our ancient retinas with daylight-mimicking signals, which creates total biological confusion right when our brains are desperately trying to execute a 300,000-year-old sleep program. It's wild when you think about it.
I really want you to absorb this concept. If you're a focused learner trying to optimize your life, the absolute most important thing you can learn about sleep is this. Your body isn't broken. It's just remembering. When your eyes snap open at 2 a.m., it is not a malfunction. It's an ancient, perfectly tuned biological echo from a time when the watch was just a normal, everyday part of the human experience.
So let's quickly summarize the key takeaways from all this incredible source material. First, we really need to stop stressing about the unbroken 8-hour block. It is a modern historical anomaly, not a biological rule. Second, we have to understand that artificial light is a massive, modern override of incredibly deep, 300,000-year-old biological programming. And third, if you wake up at 2 a.m., know that this wakefulness is a perfectly natural echo of the past. It's just the ghost of the midnight watch reasserting itself.
So I want to leave you with this final powerful thought. Tonight, when you walk into your bedroom and flip that light switch, effectively shutting off the modern world, will you remember the 300,000 years of darkness that built you? Because once you truly understand the lost history of sleep, the night becomes a whole lot less frustrating and a whole lot more fascinating. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer.